Thank you.
Okay, can you all hear me okay? Okay, so we've got quite a few questions
Lots of them.
here.
Use the mic.
This question, can you hear me? All right. This question is from, we're going to ask everyone to stand. Whoever asks a question, please stand.
If you feel.
Comfortable. If you're not, that's fine. Okay. Leanne Goncher. How will Congress save the Department of Education and student loan forgiveness IDR funds?
Thank you so much for that question. I will start by saying that I am something like 90% sure that I am the member of Congress with the largest student loan debt. I mean, I'm not even saying that as an accomplishment, but it is to say to remind that we are now in Congress, and I think there was a time where I could tell you how many members of Congress had student loan debts, because it's literally, we can probably count it on the one hand, very few. So very few people are even considering the impact of Trump's chaos on student loans. So just to frame what's happening right now, as I talked about the Department of Education, just today, Donald Trump signed another executive order to dismantle the Department of Education. What he said, the assurance that he said, is that they're giving it back to the states, and that they will still reserve the power of the federal government to implement Title I programs, implement federal student loans, Pell Grants, and IDEA, which is the law that ensures that every student with a disability is still able to access a free and appropriate education. But what we know is that, well, first of all, let's say what we know. What is Congress going to do? Well, what we really need is for Republicans to grow a spine. The reality is, and I'm going to say this because I'm going to say this a couple of times, we cannot have a dictatorship unless the Republicans in the House and the Senate say and give up their power as a co-equal branch of government. And we need to be putting pressure on them to remind them of why we are a co-equal branch of government. That's what it takes. Because the reality is that Donald Trump actually does not have the legal power to dismantle a federal agency that was authorized by an act of Congress, and the Department of Education is the perfect example of that. He does not actually have the legal power to do so. So what he's actually trying to do right now is to piecemeal take it apart. And he's firing staff, so that what ends up happening is that even though he hasn't gotten rid of the Department of Education legally, what's happening is that there is no capacity to actually implement the programs. And as we are fighting through our next budget fights, that they're deprioritizing the federal government being one of the financiers of public education in our country, right? That's their ultimate goal. Their ultimate goal is to dismantle public education, not the Department of Education, public education, so that we can have a privatized system, so that people like Jeff Yass and other billionaires who are vested in the economic model of education can be able to do that. So that's the number one. We know that the courts are probably going to say that that is not legal and that he can't do that. But what we really need to do is we need people right now to understand what the Department of Education actually does. We need people to understand what the implications will be if the federal government is no longer funding or participating in public education at the rate that it is right now. And they're trying to tell you all that if we just put public education back to the states, then that means that the states should rightfully be able to do it. But the problem is that the states rely heavily on federal dollars. Heavily. In Pittsburgh public school itself, I think that that the federal government provides about $4,000 per child at least. The state of Pennsylvania, those numbers are similar. We rely on the federal government to provide dollars. If we cut it, this is what you can expect. If the federal government does not fund public education at the rate that it does now, or they dismantle the Department of Education, you, the taxpayer, will shoulder that burden. We have a property tax scheme in this state and largely around the country where the burden of funding public education largely falls on the taxpayer, the property taxes. And because we have a municipal school district system, municipality by municipality. So if you live in school districts like Woodland Hills or Penn Hills or Wilkinsburg, the city of Pittsburgh, you can imagine that your property taxes will skyrocket will skyrocket. And I imagine that you all don't want that to happen. But the problem is that Elon Musk and the people who are running this whole scheme, they actually don't understand the implications. It's why we see them doing something and then having to backtrack. So what we need to do and what we're trying to do right now is to sound the alarm. We have to sound the alarm so that people, especially in Republican districts, rural communities rely on the Department of Education. All families with disabilities, with students with disabilities, rely on the Department of Education. All low-income families across the country through Title I schools rely on the Department of Education for implementation and for oversight of these programs. So if we get rid of those things, everybody is going to be impacted. So we need more participation. Last week, they went to the Department of Education offices here in Pittsburgh. I couldn't come because I had a cold. But we will be back out to keep sounding the alarm on this, because really what we're going to have to rely on is Donald Trump not disobeying the courts. So that's going to bring another question. We don't have to ask it yet. But the next question is what happens when Donald Trump disobeys the courts? When Donald Trump disobeys the courts, it's going to be up to us to put parameters on him. The reality is that there is not a quick legislative fix. But if the people of this country will not abide him stepping over on our checks and balances, then we can put parameters on what we will allow him to do. When they hear from us, when they hear that districts across the country actually did not want the Department of Education to be dismantled, when we hear from our states attorneys generals, people like that will be rising up in a chorus very soon. We need that to happen very fast. We need people to get out information about what the impacts, how far-reaching they are going to be. But as for my Republican colleagues, I'm sorry, I will say I don't have a lot of faith in them being the parameter. I don't. And that's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate because their districts rely on this too. So that is as best of an answer that I can give you to that.